Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. United Kingdom's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned that China poses a national security threat to Britain, but he's also urging deeper economic engagement in the same breath, emphasizing that Britain must adopt a more balanced policy towards China. Speaking to business leaders in London, Starmer has criticized the UK's previous approach towards China, which he stated swung from a golden age of enthusiasm to an ice age of hostility. He's also stressed that protecting national security remains non-negotiable, but has argued that strong safeguards allow room for cooperation in trade and technology. Starmer has highlighted that senior ministers of his government have already re-engaged with Beijing, securing billions in export gains for sectors including finance, pharmaceuticals and luxury goods. Take a look at what he had to say.
Yes, the narrative ran that China was the coming power. Well, now it has arrived, and the UK needs a China policy that recognises this reality. But instead, for years, we've blown hot and cold. We had the golden age of relations under David Cameron and George Osborne, which then flipped to the ice age that some still advocate. The result is that whilst our allies have developed a more sophisticated approach, the UK has become an outlier, a country that poses real national security threats to the United Kingdom. With all that in mind, the absence of engagement is just staggering, a dereliction of duty, because it means that, unlike our allies, we have not been standing up for our interests.
All right, there, of course, viewers, we've heard what Sir Keir Starmer has had to say. He's, of course, highlighted that the UK's strategic position towards China over the last decade or so has been oscillating for quite a while, which has made the United Kingdom an outlier as far as dealing with China is concerned. Yes, there are real national security concerns, as he's put it, but he stated that an absence of ties and establishing better ties is a dereliction of duty by the United Kingdom. Of course, Keir Starmer was speaking to business leaders in London. He stated that it does remain non-negotiable as far as the national security concerns are in light and in focus, but strong safeguards allow room for cooperation in trade and technology. Starmer has highlighted that senior ministers of his government have already re-engaged with Beijing, securing billions in export gains for sectors including finance, pharmaceuticals and luxury goods. Let's in fact listen in to what Keir Starmer has stated once again.
The narrative ran that China was the coming power. Well, now it has arrived, and the UK needs a China policy that recognises this reality. But instead, for years, we've blown hot and cold. We had the golden age of relations under David Cameron and George Osborne, which then flipped to the ice age that some still advocate. The result is that, whilst our allies have developed a more sophisticated approach, the UK has become an outlier, a country that poses real national security threats to the United Kingdom. With all that in mind, the absence of engagement is just staggering, a dereliction of duty, because it means that, unlike our allies, we have not been standing up for our interests.
All right, viewers, on that note, we're shifting focus to more developments coming in. Authorities in Hong Kong have stated that they have arrested 13 people for suspected manslaughter in a probe into the city's deadliest fire in decades, pointing to substandard renovation materials for fueling a blaze that has claimed at least 151 lives. Hong Kong's chief executive, John Lee, has now stated that an investigation into those ascertained to be accountable is underway and that 13 arrests have been made by the police and another 12 by the corruption body as well. He's also announced an independent committee to investigate the fire. The leader has called for serious reform and has stated that he will ensure that justice is served. Listen in to his remarks.
I call for thorough investigation and serious reform. We will overcome the obstacles of vested interests, pursue accountability, regardless of who he or she is. We must uncover the truth, ensure that justice is served, let the deceased rest in peace, and provide comfort to the living. Therefore, while criminal and fire investigations are proceeding continuously, I will establish an independent committee to conduct comprehensive and in-depth review to reform the building work system and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future.
Remember, viewers, the deadly blaze has now claimed over 150 lives. Up until now, 40 people are still reported to be missing. There's, of course, a lot of solidarity across the world pouring in for the people of Hong Kong who are grieving at the moment. Donations have also been pouring in. They've reached about $115 million at the moment. But at the same time, remember, this blaze had in fact claimed 151 lives at the Wang Fuk Court. It commenced on the last week itself. And we've been seeing calls from people of Hong Kong for accountability even as the probe is underway. We're now learning that 13 have been arrested up until now as far as probe into corruption allegations are concerned. Remember, the building materials that were used for these renovations are under scrutiny at the moment. But we've seen Mr. Lee, the leader, the CEO of Hong Kong, the chief executive, has stated that investigation into those are certain to be accountable is underway at the moment. It's important to ensure that vested interests are overcome, that reform takes place in order to pursue accountability, and that justice is served for all of those people who've lost their loved ones. Let's in fact listen in once again to what Mr. Lee had to say.
I call for thorough investigation and serious reform. We will overcome the obstacles of vested interests, pursue accountability, regardless of who he or she is. We must uncover the truth, ensure that justice is served, let the deceased rest in peace, and provide comfort to the living. Therefore, while criminal and fire investigations are proceeding continuously, I will establish an independent committee to conduct comprehensive and in-depth review to reform the building work system and prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future.
In the meantime, authorities have stated that the investigation is focusing on substandard renovation materials, faulty fire systems, and earlier complaints from residents as well. Meanwhile, remember, thousands have been displaced from the 7 damaged tower blocks, even as efforts to rebuild the daily routines in temporary homes are underway. There's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of grief as well that has spread across Hong Kong and beyond as well. In fact, security officials have stated that some people fear suspicion of using this tragedy for political aims. But of course, we've seen the chief executive made it very clear that vested interests will be overcome, reforms will be carried out to pursue accountability and that justice is served as well. Of course, in the meantime, we've learned that 13 people have been arrested so far in the fire that has claimed 151 lives. Remember, 40 people are still missing at the moment. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to further developments coming in. China and Japan are issuing different accounts of a maritime incident near the disputed Senkaku Islands. Confrontation involved their coast guards and a Japanese fishing vessel entering the area early this morning. China says that the Japanese fishing vessel illegally entered its own territorial waters, which it refers to as the Diaoyu Islands. China has added that its coast guard then removed the vessel, claiming that the Senkaku Islands is Chinese territory. Meanwhile, Japan's Coast Guard has described a different sequence of events, stating that 2 Chinese Coast Guard ships approached the Japanese fishing vessel early this morning, and Japanese patrol vessels then expelled the Chinese vessels from the area. This incident, of course, follows other recent activities in the region. In mid-November, China had claimed that its Coast Guard conducted routine patrols around the islands. This latest exchange now adds to an already tense environment between the two countries, as relations have been under strain since early November after comments were made by Japanese Prime Minister Keir, which indicated that a potential Chinese attack on Taiwan could prompt a military response from Tokyo. This, of course, escalated to the point where the Chinese Consul General in Osaka had then issued some rather, if I may say, horrific threats against the Japanese Prime Minister. With us on the broadcast this morning is Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goel. He is, of course, a former diplomat joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting developments. We do know that the Senkaku Islands has been a flashpoint between Japan and China. But considering the fact that ties have been strained to a different level now in the aftermath of Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks, what do you make of this particular incident? Do you think this was deliberately orchestrated to really test the response of the Japanese side? And of course, whether they would buckle down to pressure from Beijing?
My own understanding of what has happened is that it is, as you said, a deliberate effort to keep the pressure up from China on Japan and Japan on China. It is more like a political slugfest between the two at the present, because in Japan, the nationalistic feelings on the territorial integrity and ownership of the Senkaku Island is very high. At the same time, China is not going to give up its claim on Senkaku Island. It's a very old claim and very old territorial dispute between the two. Of course, Taiwan issue has aggravated the whole security metrics between Japan and China. But I don't think at present really either Japan or China would be very interested in taking it to the extreme of military confrontation. So my sense is that this will remain a political and security irritant, but that is where it will stop. Yeah.
Indeed. And in context of what we've also been seeing, the sort of escalating rhetoric, the export bans, it spilled over to the economic realm as well, with export bans being imposed by China as well. China warning its citizens not to travel to Japan. Japan issuing similar warnings as well. Where do you think this will really head? Because, a lot of analysts are pointing out that at the end of the day, what we're seeing is Beijing really trying to, test how Takaichi is reacting, because we all know she's been a China hawk for a very long time, even before she's taken, oath as the Japanese Prime Minister. So where do you see this heading?
Absolutely, Pia. I'm so happy that you have done your research on this. And it's quite true, really. The Prime Minister at the present is a China hawk, and her political popularity in Japan is really deriving out of this hawkish attitude on China. And therefore, I would say that to a large extent, it probably will increase its popularity in Japan. Now, the ban from China on import of certain things from Japan, tariff sanctions, etc., that will happen. China will put pressure on Japan. I think Japanese economy is in a position to withstand those pressures, will have negative impact, but nothing of the kind that would make Japan buckle up under the pressure really. So I would imagine that the tensions will rise, both economical areas as well as political and defense, but it will be an interesting play really between the two. And you see, a lot really depends upon USA. The kind of attitude that the USA takes on the whole issue. USA and Japan have a security partnership. And therefore, in case of any threat to Japan, the USA will be expected to come to defense of Japan. But will the USA do that, or what will USA advise Japan? Will they advise Japan to back out or stay calm? Because Trump is very interested in building a relationship with China. We have seen that now. So it's a very interesting play, as I said earlier. Let us watch and watch. Let us see and watch what happens. But I wouldn't be really alarmed by the kind of situation that is developing in the East China Sea.
Absolutely, you did mention Donald Trump. He did hold phone calls with both Sanai Takeichi as well as Xi Jinping. Recently itself, he's been trying to push the G2. Interestingly, we have seen the administration be a little more cold towards the Taiwanese. There was in fact one instance in which their vice president was supposed to head to a Latin American country, and America did not allow its airspace to be used as well. So all of this is building up to something quite interesting. I request you, sir, to stay on with us. We're tracking some other very crucial developments. The European Union has now formally terminated a long-running dispute with China at the